Hello and welcome to Tabletop 24. I'm Alan.
I'm John.
I'm Brian.
And welcome to another episode of We'll Play Again, where we take a look at a game we've recently got to the table with a view of how quickly we can get it back to the table. With ever-growing collections, time can be precious, so we answer the question of, would we play again? Today we have Wayfarers of the South Tigris from Garfield Games. This is the first in the trilogy of the South Tigris games, and we are explorers that are going to be charting our lands out from Baghdad with the aim of charting some of the land, some of the sea, the skies, employing villagers to help us out, and also seeking some inspiration to boost our overall scoring and reputation. All of that will be looking for us to be moving along our journal track and writing in our journal, whereby we're going to have some of the prerequisite tags that we'll have picked up on some of the cards previously. We'll be moving all the way along the board until we reach the end. These cards and everything will be going on our main board, which hosts our caravan. On our board, we're going to be placing lands to the left, any sea cards to the right. Skies will go above in either direction, and then we can place our inspiration above those to boost our scoring, or be placing villagers beneath those cards in order to be gaining some benefits from those places or from our rest action. On our turn, we'll be doing one of three actions. The first one will be potentially placing a worker of the corresponding colour on a card around the outside of the board, which will enable us to take the action that's pictured. So for instance, this one here will enable us to gain one of these blue tiles by paying a cost of coins or influence in one of the guilds. We can then place a dice, which will have rolled at the start of our round or the start of after our rest phase, which we can then place on one of the locations on our board or one of the cards that we've subsequently picked up. If that space requires an icon, such as this one requires a camel, we must be able to either take that from an action that we've got access to. So for instance, everybody starts with being able to take away one influence from the shipping guild or the blue guild to essentially give themselves a boat, which would enable to be placed on this part of the board here. Or alternatively, on the caravan above, where everybody will have started with a camel at 1 and a telescope at 6, and we'll be picking up potentially other tiles as we go through, which will give us access to other icons or covering up bonuses to be gaining those bonuses as we go. Third action is to rest. Now, to rest, we will be picking up all of our dice, rolling them again, and we would then, if we have 0 or 1 dice before we've picked up our dice, we would then be able to enact any of our rest actions that we might have from the start of the game or from any cards from villagers that we've picked up. And most of those are going to be focused at getting us benefits, so gaining coins, resources, or implements in guilds, or potentially journaling to move along the journal track. As another option, through some of the icons that you'll be seeing around, you may be able to place your influence on cards around the board. So for instance, I could place an influence there if I was able to place an influence by one of my actions, such as where this icon is. That then causes any player that interacts with that card or that space to provide me with a provision or a coin. All of that is in aid of everybody moving along the journal track until we reach one of these spaces at the end. As soon as the first person reaches that space, the game will go into a final round of play whereby we would score up. You will gain points based on your primary tags, so number of individual primary tags. So if I had 4 city tags, for instance, I'll be getting 5 points. Or if we have a set of 4, you're going to get 5 points for each set. We'll then also score points based on our sky cards, which will score differently depending upon what type of card they are. So we've got comets, sun and moon, planets, or just stars. And if we've sought inspiration throughout the game, we could then potentially be doubling the points of that card that's above by meeting the criteria on the left of each of those inspiration cards. That, in a nutshell, it is a very big nutshell, is a rules overview, and I do stress the point of that as an overview. Okay, there's a lot of more intricacies that go in that, and I think let's lead off with the first negative of this, and that is, in fact, the teach. That was probably one of the longest rules overviews we've done for any of our videos, and it's probably half of what you need to know.
Yes.
And I think you need to know everything before you go in. you cannot teach this game directly out of the rulebook because it explains a lot of concepts early on. Concepts of where you can place your cards, concepts of what the guilds are and what influence are, before you even get to what your actions are. Your actions are very simple. Place a dice, place a worker, rest. But if you do not understand the rest of what's going on here, you're not going to have a good game. And if you've missed a point in that explanation or that teach, or you've switched off for 2 seconds in that teach, good luck. Because you could really miss a vital point of the game because things are really important. And we've not gone into detail. So one of the detail rules is when you take a villager, you must place that villager under the card with the icon. So this villager can only go under an open water card. This villager can only go under a harbour, and you're only getting that benefit when you activate that harbour. So they're very specific rules that you kind of need to go into. But I think the positive of that, it allows you for so much more freedom of play. The way I explain this game to start with is you are going to build your own game. Okay, everybody starts off with these boards, which are mostly the same apart from the caravan and the bonuses you're going to get when you cover those up. You get started by having a harbour, having a city card, having a observation and a library tag, a sky card that's going to give you points. Those are pretty much the same. Everybody's got those to start with, so it gives you something to go for to start with. But as soon as you place that one card to the left, to the right, or above, you're off. And you're creating your own game at that point, which is great, but it's daunting. And there's a lot to learn on that.
Yes. You're right in the freedom. One of the things I agree with the freedom is that everybody's not doing the same stuff in the same phases. If you want to rest, you can rest and everybody else takes it. And then you start your turns afresh. So everybody's out of sync with each other. And I think there's an absolute beauty in that you're all doing different things at different times. I think that for this game, it absolutely sings. That freedom of play that everybody's doing their own little things is great for me.
But equally, you don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's difficult to look across the table and see what's going on with your board because the tabs are so small. You can't easily see that. So I can't second guess what you're doing or try to stop you getting ahead of me.
I don't think there's much of that in this anyway. The only things that you can do to really do that is take some of these or some of these that would affect what you're going to score at the end. Other than that, I don't think there is the one.
I think some of the set collection might cause that. So if you both go for the same or both docks, for example, then you might spot that. But you can probably see that from people taking them off the table anyway.
I think there is some interaction there of, okay, well, if I almost a hate draft, if I take this card, it's not going to score anybody else's points. But I think if you are getting to the point in this game when you're hate drafting, you're really doing detriment to yourself. Unless it works for you. So if I know Brian's got 3 observatories and I've got 3 observatories, well, I'm taking that card, he's benefiting me, but also hurting Brian. But the likelihood is, given the spread of cards, we haven't got 3.
There's so much variety that chances of you picking the same thing is pretty low.
But again, maybe not to the detriment of it, but one of the difficulties in it is that those synergies of cards, of having enough of these and those to make it work for you, but to the same point of having enough these and those to be able to move your stuff past the counters on the track as well. There's a lot to keep your eye on and make sure you're gaining enough. I spent a load of rounds trying to get bits to be able to go through different areas because I didn't have enough. And at which point I was missing out getting some of those and some of those which other people were taking, and it's a very tight balancing act.
Optimizing your play is the biggest part of this game, I think, and it would take several plays to kind of understand the game enough to be able to do that. So it does lend itself to repeated play in that sense. One thing we haven't really mentioned much is the look and feel of the whole thing. I mean, it's a classic sort of H.M. McDonald, Shem Phillips look-alike game. The iconography is nice and consistent. If you've played 1 or 2 of these kind of games before, you'll recognise a lot of the sort of same kind of concepts going on. So if you've played a similar game, it'll pick up a little bit easier.
But that being said, it doesn't play like any of the
It
North Sea or
doesn't
West Kingdom games at all.
No.
Yeah. We were saying this before. I think every single game is different from Garfield. You've got the same themes. You've got the same ideas of this is a worker, this is gain a card, this is coins. You've got that familiarity with it, but this is nothing like any of the others.
No, it's not really.
And I don't think any of the others are like any of themselves. Yes, in the North Sea trilogy, those 3 games were different. The West Kingdom trilogy was very much worker placement. This South Tigris trilogy is going to be about dice. They've already said that. That's what's going to be there. But it's how so different they are with using the same concept
a bit of tableau building
stuff.
No, we did find that we were playing it once, and we're sitting next to each other. And if your tableau gets built off in this direction, your tableau gets built in that direction. We were kind of clashing a little bit. So to move the whole player board around.
I mean, you can see here right now, this table is actually quite chocker as it stands. You then add 4 people building up, down, left and right, circle, jump bits. You kind of get into a point where it's just you can't keep away from each other.
You can't really stack the cards all the time either, because you just see what's on the card to get the benefit of it. So that's not great.
Yeah, and again on the iconography, they use every inch of the card to benefit how that's going to work. And obviously you've got these cards that, for instance, the villagers will tuck underneath, so that's great. But when you've got the star cards that could be going over any of them, you need to see the icons you're going to get there. Yeah, it's a table hog. I mean, this table's 4x4 and you don't see all of it. I think we could quite easily play this on here if we had 2 on one side, 2 on the other.
Yeah.
But I think anything
the dining room
smaller,
table might be a bit more tricky.
Yeah, I mean, we played this on the dining room table when we played it, and actually it didn't quite fit, and that's not a small dining room table either.
But I think it's been 3 players the times we played it, and that for the size was just perfect anymore, and we would have struggled. We would have needed been on the worktop playing it. One of the things is you need it's a bit like Castle Burgundy. You need to be rolling well to get the things that you want. Yeah, you can negate them with bits from
some
here.
Cards here that allow you to increase your dice roll.
Yeah. So if you've picked up a tile and you've put it on your caravan, for instance, that now means that any 2 could also be a 3. And I had a whole game where my whole plan was just to be able to have any number of dice and end up as a 6. That was my plan. It was just to see push buttons and what was going to go on. So you have got a little bit of mitigation there, and you could be using.
Yeah, the influence helps as well. You can add dice up and down by taking one of those out. So there are ways to pick the dice.
The same.
But you're right. You haven't got the right one.
You can put that on there and 4, and then roll 3s and 5s and 2s, and never get to use it, unfortunately.
Yeah,
so
and your dice pool's quite small, isn't it? So you start off with 3. You get another dice when you hit this portion of the board, and you get another dice when you hit this portion of the board. So you even at the best you've got 5. Odds are rolling all different numbers. You're probably not going to get the spread you need. So I think in order to mitigate that, you need to be placing well on your caravan. And it might mean that you end up double stacking some of these. So it might mean that actually you end up trying to put in 3 or 4 camels as you go along, because you're focusing on land actions that are going to need camels to do them and trigger them. And there are some cards out there, such as this one here, where it requires 2 icons. Now, if you haven't got those icons, you're a bit buggered. Now, the villagers help with that, the tiles help with that, but you can grind yourself into a place of not being able to do too much. I mean, your only option there is to then go and seek more things. I mean, yes, you can always rest, and you can always re-roll any number of your dice at that point, but resting when you've not got 0 or 1 dice is a penalty, I think.
Yeah. Very rarely do we find ourselves resting when it wasn't 1 or 0 dice left.
No, we've mentioned how different this is, and I think it's probably the heaviest of the series. Now, that comes with the caveat that I've not played Viscounts yet, but I have played all of the rest heavily. And I think, this very simple in what you're trying to do, in the sense of you've got 3 actions on your turn. Very simple. But what you get from those actions, where they chain together the concepts of, okay, what's going to benefit me from doing that, mitigating with the little bit of luck that you might get on your dice, then you throw into the mix that somebody's put an influence on a card that you want to get and you haven't got the coins or the resource or the provisions to pay for it. It makes it quite a challenge. And
Yeah, very tight in that respect. The resources and the money that you get have to be spent in the right manner and can be tricky to gain.
Yeah.
Which isn't a bad thing. I like quite lean games like that, and I think they end up having a nice balance to them and a nice play. But yeah, this does bear repeated plays just to find that good point and that just where you need to push it to be able to optimize it.
There are points everywhere, but you have to be careful falling into the trap because some of the most points you're going to get from tags. Now, if you can get multiple sets, you're going to be in quite a few points, but then you're missing out on potentially getting singles of a lot of.
Yeah, the points escalator really favours focusing on one or two sets. But if they don't come out off the deck, then you're kind of waiting for those cards to cycle through.
That's a problem, that the cards don't cycle through that much.
Yeah.
I feel that you could. I sat in a game and just waited for the cards to come out, and they didn't come out.
And a lot of these inspiration requires you to have 5 or 6 of the same kind of tag to get it triggered. Without, if you're one short, it doesn't help you at all.
No. So you could have spent a big action, and these inspiration cards, you don't get many of them. So you do get 2 off of the track, potentially a third one if you pick the right spot over here. And there are a couple of cards that give you an instant benefit to pick one of these. Now, the benefit is these don't cost you anything, and you can discard them to gain a benefit. But I think in my first game, I made the mistake that I got it so early that I discarded it for a couple of resources that didn't do me any good when actually having the double of a point could have actually stood me in really good stead.
Yeah, and the planets can be, because of the cost of them, and if you've got somebody sitting on there that you need to pay an extra coin, 4 coins is the minimum. Coins are hard to get.
Only was it 4?
So there's 1 moon, 1 sun, as you'd expect.
Yeah.
I think there's 5 planets.
That's right.
Which is quite thematic considering actually you wouldn't have been able to see the rest of the planets in the solar system. Multiple stars and comets.
But there's a big deck. So if you're collecting planets, you might not.
Yeah.
Unlikely to get them all.
You know, if the sun or the moon comes out, well, that's one of the first ones that's going to go because of its rarity.
Yeah. And the fact that somewhere on some of these boards, like for instance, this part here on the board, you need a sun or a moon. So if you've kind of hemmed yourself into this spot, you've either got to have 3 vistas or a sun and a moon.
Yeah.
Now, you might have already planned that.
I was stuck there.
I think in my last game, I had my last 5 spots and I could go through them on when I journaled. And that wasn't a problem. And I'd learned that from the game I played previously. So it's kind of, I think more plays of this, strategies are going to come out and ways to milk points are going to come out of it. And I think there is a lot going on here.
But again, that would suffer from experienced players playing with new players, and the game would quite unbalanced, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that mitigates that is everything in this is variable. So these decks are all shuffled and played out, and they're all different in different places. These bonus tokens are all shuffled and dealt out. The only things that are really static are the workers, the tiles that you've got on the boards, the 4 player boards, but you can mix those up. And even to the point where I believe on the back of each of these boards is another path of the journal. So actually, you've got so much variability in there to be able to map every choice. I think is quite a challenge.
These came at a premium as well because there's 3 of them, and you're not limited to just taking one. You can take as many, so you could lock people out of getting a pigeon. It is a pigeon, a camel. So again, it's just finding out. Those first couple of moves, just finding your way just to get going. And just a word on the coins, I love a Garphill coin, and these ones are nice.
Yeah, they're always great when they come up with the trilogies. So there is that piece of right place, right time, isn't there? So if somebody just happens to take this card, everything moves down, and the next card comes, and it's the one that you've been waiting for. I.e., you've taken the moon. The next card that comes out is the sun.
Yeah. The next.
You're going to do everything you can to get that card.
Yeah.
Because it gives you such a points boost.
Yeah.
Or for instance, the rest villagers. These come out. There's several in the deck, but they can really boost that ability when you're resting. So when you're resting, you are triggering 3 or 4 different things, giving you resources or
you're racing up this track.
So I think all in, it bears a lot of replay. But that replay comes with the cost of teach.
So one of the things when we first played this, the next day I was going over the rule books to find out anything that I'd missed or misunderstood or could pick up on the next play, because it did leave a lasting memory on me, and an impression that I want to play this again and get this to the table again, because there was so much in there and I want to understand how to play it, and the puzzle in it intrigued me really nicely.
So then, John, with everything all said there, would you play it again?
I'd play it again soon if I could. If it got to the table, if on a normal game night, definitely would. Like I said, the puzzle in there, it intrigues me, and I want to understand it more. Don't get me wrong, this isn't a light game. It's a heavy game. There's a lot to keep on top of, but it's got something in it that I want to know more about.
I think there's also a point in there that time. It's got a really good weight to it. It plays in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Less than that. When we've played it, we play with new people every time. So, yeah, I think that comes to a point. Bro?
I play again. I prefer this to the West Kingdom games. I find those quite difficult to get my head around. Because I felt like you have to do actions in certain sequences to get the best out of the game. But this didn't feel like that at all. I felt like I could do kind of what I wanted to do with this game. But I still need to learn more about how to, as we said, optimize this game and understand how the game works and how things work together. So I think I play it again. I need to understand a bit more how this works, and get the best out of it, I think.
Yeah. And for me, it's we'll play again. I think that's no surprise. It's a Garfield game. So for me, it's top of the list. For anything, I think the only thing I haven't mentioned is the solo variant. So in the solo variant, you've got this complete sort of changed automa that you literally have 4 different boards with 4 different sort of designs on them that are really quite complex, and I think complex in its build but not in its execution. So really looking forward to getting that out to give that a go. The only limiting factor to me to get this to the table regularly is it has to come probably to people that I've bought it to before, because the teach is so hard on this, and I feel and you always feel pressured when you're teaching a new game to people anyway, but you need to understand everything in this game to have a good game. You can have an okay game, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I feel that I'm shorting people if I'm not giving them the full explanation, and there's a good chance I'm going to miss one rule. Like John said, he was pouring back over the rule book to make sure that we covered everything, and we had for the most part. There was a couple of bits where we misplayed, but there's so many little nuances in there. But all in, I definitely would play again. So thank you for watching along with this episode of We'll Play Again. If you haven't done so already, check out our other videos on the channel, give us a like and subscribe, and we will catch you next time. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.